Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Rowena, which is titled like this: I bought a house without telling my parents. When I was on a business trip, a neighbor called me. There are some people in your house. I checked the security cameras and found my family at a secret party. So I called the police. Well, let's go. My name is Rowena, I'm 32, and I work as a sales rep for this big company. I travel all the time for work, like constantly. I've been living in this rented apartment for years now, and I'm so sick of it. The walls are thin as paper, and my neighbors are loud as hell. I can hear them fighting, their TV blasting, kids screaming, it never stops. When I come back from these exhausting business trips, all I want is some peace and quiet, but instead I get a headache from all the noise. I've been saving money for a while now, and I finally decided I'm done with this. I want my own house. Not some fancy mansion or anything, just a normal house with a yard where I can actually relax. So I called my friend Mike, who's a realtor. Hey Mike, I need you to find me a house, I told him over the phone. About time, what are you looking for? Medium-sized, nothing too big. But I want it away from busy roads and highways. I need a big yard and good neighbors who won't drive me crazy. Got it, give me some time to look around. I'll call you when I find some options. While Mike was doing his thing, I decided to visit my parents. I know, I should visit them more often. But with all the traveling, it's hard to find time. They live in this small house across town, and honestly, I always feel guilty about not coming by enough. When I got to their place, I saw my sister Janet's car in the driveway. Of course she was there. Janet is 2 years older than me, 34, and she's always at our parents' house. She's married to this guy Rob, and they have 2 kids, Tommy who's 6 and little Sarah who's 4. Janet doesn't work, so she brings the kids to mom and dad's house all the time. Our parents basically help raise those kids. I walked in and found the whole family in the living room. Tommy was running around with his toy car, making engine noises, while Sarah was coloring on the coffee table. Janet was on the couch looking tired, Rob was scrolling through his phone, and Mom was in the kitchen finishing dinner. We all sat down for dinner, and as usual, the whole conversation was about Janet and her kids. Mom was going on about how smart Tommy is, how he's reading already. Dad was making jokes with Sarah, getting her to giggle. Janet was complaining about how expensive everything is getting, groceries, clothes for the kids, you name it. I was sitting there eating my mashed potatoes, trying to find a moment to jump into the conversation. Finally, there was a little pause when Tommy knocked over his juice cup and everyone was dealing with that mess. Actually, I have some news too, I said, I'm planning to buy a house. The whole table went quiet. Like, dead silent. Tommy was still making a fuss about his spilled juice, but everyone else just stared at me. I thought they'd be happy for me, you know? Like, that's great, Rowena, or congratulations. But instead, they all looked. I don't know how to describe it, unhappy, annoyed? Janet's face was the worst. She was looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before. It was like she was angry and jealous at the same time. Then Mom put down her fork and said, "A house? Rowena, you don't need a house. You're traveling all the time anyway. What's the point? You can just keep renting." I was confused. What do you mean I don't need a house? Everyone needs their own place. Janet jumped in immediately, I need a house way more than you do. I have kids, Rowena. Kids need space to play, their own rooms. You're just one person who's never even home. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Janet, what are you talking about? I'm saying your future house should be mine. I deserve it more, I have a family. I looked around the table, waiting for someone to tell Janet she was being ridiculous. But Dad nodded like she was making sense. Rob nodded too. Even Mom was agreeing with her. She's right, Rowena, Dad said in this stern voice he used when we were kids and in trouble. You don't have a family, you don't have children. You work all the time and can't even keep a boyfriend long enough to settle down. Janet needs that house more than you do. I felt like I was in some kind of crazy dream. Are you all serious right now? I'm buying this house with my own money that I earned. Family should help family, Mom said, like that explained everything. Janet's struggling with 2 young children. I'm not giving my house to anyone, I said, my voice getting louder. I've worked hard for this, I saved up for years. This is my dream, and I'm making it happen for me. Dad's face got red. You're being selfish, Rowena. You live alone, you have no responsibilities except work. You can live perfectly fine in that apartment. I think you've all lost your minds, I said, standing up from the table. This is crazy. I went to the guest room where I'd left my purse and overnight bag. I could hear them all talking loudly in the dining room, probably about what a terrible person I am. I grabbed my stuff and headed for the door. Rowena, where are you going? Mom called after me. We're not done talking about this. Yes, we are, I said without turning around. I'm done with this conversation. Don't you dare walk out on us, Janet yelled. We're your family. But I was already out the door and getting in my car. I could hear them shouting from inside the house, but I didn't care. I drove straight home to my noisy apartment, shaking the whole way. When I got home, my phone was already buzzing like crazy. Missed calls from Mom, Dad, and Janet. I ignored them all and went straight to bed, but I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing Dad's voice saying I didn't deserve a house because I don't have kids. The next morning, I had a bunch of text messages waiting for me. Mom wrote, Rowena, you're being selfish and cruel. Family helps family. Janet needs that house for her children. Dad's message was shorter, call us back. We need to talk about this properly. But Janet's messages were the worst. She sent like 10 of them, all saying basically the same thing, that I was heartless, that I didn't care about my nephews, that I should be ashamed of myself for not helping her get a house. I deleted all the messages without responding. I had work to focus on anyway. I was leaving for another business trip in a few days, and I had reports to finish. 2 weeks passed, and I didn't hear from my family again. Good. I was starting to feel normal again when Mike called me. Rowena, I found something perfect for you, he said, sounding excited. It's a 3-bedroom house with a big backyard, quiet street, great neighbors. The owners are moving out of state and they want to sell fast. It's got everything you wanted. Away from main roads, big yard with mature trees, nice neighborhood. And here's the best part, they're leaving all the furniture. Good quality stuff too. That Saturday, Mike picked me up and drove me to the house. As soon as I saw it, I knew this was it. It was perfect, not too big, not too small, with white siding and a red front door. The yard was huge with beautiful old oak trees. When we went inside, I loved it even more. The furniture was really nice, way better than anything I could afford to buy new. The kitchen had granite counters, the living room had this comfortable couch and matching chairs, and the bedrooms were spacious and bright. The neighbors on both sides are great, Mike told me as we walked through. Mrs. Henderson on the left is the sweet elderly lady who's lived here for 20 years. The family on the right has teenage kids who are very respectful. What are they asking for it? Mike told me the price, and it was exactly in my budget. I could put down a good down payment and still have money left over for emergencies. I want to make an offer, I said immediately. The owners accepted my offer that same day. Within 3 weeks, I was signing papers and getting keys. I couldn't believe how fast everything happened. I was a homeowner. I had my own house with my own yard and no noisy neighbors sharing walls with me. I didn't tell my family anything about it. After that disaster at dinner, I decided they didn't deserve to know. I wasn't even going to invite them to my housewarming party. Why would I want people there who thought I didn't deserve my own home? Moving day was amazing. I hired movers for my stuff from the apartment, which wasn't much since the house came furnished. I spent the first week just walking around, touching everything, still not believing it was really mine. I could sit in my backyard with my morning coffee and hear birds instead of traffic. At night, it was so quiet I could actually sleep without earplugs. I had to go on another business trip right after I moved in, but when I got back 2 weeks later, I was ready to celebrate. I planned a housewarming party and invited everyone I actually wanted there, my work friends, some college buddies, and a few cousins and aunts who had always been nice to me. The party was great. Everyone loved the house and kept telling me how proud they were of me for making this happen. We grilled burgers in the backyard, played music, and just had a really good time. I felt so happy and proud showing off my new home to people who actually cared about me. Around 8 o'clock, right in the middle of the party, someone knocked on my front door. I wasn't expecting anyone else, so I went to see who it was. When I opened the door, I almost fell over. There stood my parents, Janet, and Rob, all dressed up like they were invited guests. "Surprise," Mom said with this fake smile, "we found you." "What are you doing here?" I asked, still shocked. "How did you even get this address?" Mom waved her hand like it was no big deal. "Oh, we have our ways. Aren't you going to invite us in?" Before I could answer, they all just walked past me into my house. I stood there with my mouth open, watching them march into my living room like they owned the place. I figured one of my cousins or aunts must have given them the address. I should have been more careful about who I told. Once they were inside, it was like a totally different family showed up. Mom started gushing to my relatives about how proud she was of me. "Look what our Rowena accomplished, we're so happy for her. She worked so hard for this beautiful home." Dad was shaking hands with my work friends, acting like the proud father. "Yes, we always knew she'd do great things. We raised her right, you know." I wanted to scream. These were the same people who told me 2 weeks ago that I didn't deserve a house. Now they were acting like they'd supported me all along. Meanwhile, Janet and Rob split up and started walking around my house, checking out every room. I followed Janet upstairs and found her in my master bedroom, opening my closet and looking through my bathroom. Rob was downstairs examining my kitchen, opening cabinets and checking out my appliances. I felt like they were studying my house, memorizing every detail. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of my guests. They stayed for about an hour, playing the part of the loving, supportive family. Then they said they had to leave because the kids needed to get home for bedtime. As they were heading to the door, Mom turned to me with this disappointed look. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Rowena. Not inviting your own family to your housewarming party. Not even telling us you bought a house. That's just wrong. We had to hear about it from others," Dad added. "That's no way to treat your parents." I didn't feel ashamed at all. I felt relieved when they finally left. The rest of my party was so much better without them there, and my friends kept asking me why my family seemed so weird and fake. After the party, I decided to start working on my yard. I'd always wanted a garden but never had the space. Now I had this huge backyard with so many possibilities. I spent my weekends planting flowers, pulling weeds, and just enjoying being outside in my own space. That's how I met Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor. She was working in her garden one Saturday morning when I was out there struggling with this stubborn rosebush. "You need to cut it back more," she called over the fence. "Don't be afraid to really trim it." I looked up and saw this sweet little old lady with white hair and dirt on her gardening gloves. She had to be in her 70s but looked strong and healthy. "I'm Rowena," I said, walking over to the fence. "I just moved in a few weeks ago." "I'm Eleanor Henderson, but you can call me Mrs. Henderson." We started talking, and she was lovely. I told her about my job and how I traveled a lot for work. We exchanged phone numbers, and she promised to watch my house during my business trips. It was such a relief knowing someone trustworthy was looking out for my property. 2 months passed, and everything was perfect. I loved my house more every day. Then I got another business trip assignment. This one was supposed to last 2 weeks. I told Mrs. Henderson I was leaving, and she said she'd keep an eye on everything. The first week of the trip went fine. But on Wednesday night of the second week, around 11 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Henderson. "Rowena, dear, I'm sorry to call so late, but there are people in your house right now." I can see lights on and I'm hearing music. My heart jumped. What? Are you sure? I'm positive, there are definitely people inside. I can hear voices and music playing. I tried to think logically. Maybe Mrs. Henderson was getting confused. She was older, and maybe she'd been watching too many detective shows on TV. I appreciate you calling, but I think you might be mistaken. There's no way anyone could get into my house. There was silence, then Mrs. Henderson said coldly, "Well, if you don't believe me, then I won't bother telling you anything else." She hung up. I finished my business trip and flew home. When I got to my house, everything looked normal. Nothing was missing. The house was clean, and there were no signs of a break-in at all. I felt terrible about doubting Mrs. Henderson. The next morning, I bought a pie and went to apologize. When she opened the door, she was happy to see me. "I have something to show you," she said, leading me to her kitchen table where her phone was sitting. I recorded it that night. She showed me a video. It was dark and grainy, but I could clearly see my house with lights on inside. There were definitely shadows moving around through the windows. I felt sick. Oh my God. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. Can you tell who those people are?" "The video was too dark to make out faces, I can't tell, but this is definitely real." She sent the video to my phone, and I went home completely freaked out. How did someone get into my house without breaking anything? That afternoon, I called a security company. "We can have cameras installed by tomorrow morning," the technician said. "We'll put cameras at all your entrances, around the perimeter to cover the backyard, and one inside your living room. You'll be able to monitor everything from an app on your phone." "Perfect, and make sure they're not visible from outside." "Don't worry, these cameras are tiny and blend right in." The next day, they installed everything. The cameras were amazing, you really couldn't see them unless you knew exactly where to look. I tested the app and could see crystal clear video of every angle of my house. For the next month, nothing happened. I checked the app constantly, but everything was normal. I started to think maybe whoever it was wouldn't come back. Then I got assigned another business trip. This time I wasn't worried because I had my security cameras. If anyone tried to get into my house, I'd see them and call the police immediately. I told Mrs. Henderson I was leaving again, and she said she'd keep watching. 3 days after the start of the business trip, Mrs. Henderson called me late at night. "Rowena, I'm seeing people in your house again. I can hear music and voices." My heart started pounding. "I'm checking my cameras right now." I immediately opened the app on my phone and connected to my security cameras. What I saw on the live feed made my blood run cold. There were people in my living room, but these weren't strangers. It was my family, my parents, Janet, and Rob were all there, acting like they owned the place. But that wasn't even the worst part. They had guests with them, probably Janet and Rob's friends. There were about 8 people total, all sitting around my living room drinking wine and having a party. They were laughing and toasting each other with my wine glasses. I watched in complete shock as my sister walked through my house like she lived there, showing people around my home. Rob was behind my bar mixing drinks. My dad was sitting in my favorite chair like he belonged there. Mom was in my kitchen, probably using my dishes to serve food. My first instinct was to call my parents and sister immediately and scream at them to get out of my house. But I was so angry, so completely enraged, that I decided they deserved worse than just being yelled at. I dialed 911, "There are strangers in my house right now. I'm out of town on a business trip, and people have broken into my home illegally. They're having a party in my living room. Are you watching this happen right now, ma'am?" "Yes, I have security cameras. I can see them on my phone. There are about 8 people in my house drinking and partying. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me and keep watching your cameras so you can tell us what's happening." I watched the live feed from my security cameras while staying on the phone with the 911 dispatcher. My family and their friends were still partying in my living room, completely unaware that police were on their way. About 10 minutes later, I saw police cars pull up outside my house. 2 officers got out and walked to my front door. They knocked loudly, and I watched through my cameras as everyone inside froze. The music stopped immediately. Rob answered the door, and I could see him talking to the police officers. He looked nervous and kept gesturing with his hands like he was trying to explain something. The officers stepped inside, and I watched as they started talking to everyone in my living room. My parents and Janet looked shocked. The friends they'd brought looked confused and scared. One of the officers was taking notes while the other one seemed to be asking questions. Then things got crazy. Rob, who was obviously drunk, suddenly got aggressive with one of the police officers. I watched him raise his voice and point his finger at the cop. The officer stepped back and said something, but Rob kept getting more agitated. "Ma'am, one of the individuals is becoming belligerent with our officers," the dispatcher told me. "We're calling for backup." Rob actually tried to push the police officer, that was it. The officer immediately grabbed Rob and put him in handcuffs. Rob was struggling and yelling, though I couldn't hear what he was saying through the cameras. More police cars arrived within minutes. I watched as all the party guests were escorted outside. Janet was crying, my parents looked terrified, and Rob was being led away in handcuffs. Everyone was taken to police cars and driven away from my house. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was a police officer calling from the station. "Ms. Rowena, this is Officer Martinez. We've detained several individuals who were found in your home tonight. They claim they had permission to be there and that you gave them keys to your house, is this true?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I never gave anyone permission to be in my house. I never gave anyone keys. They broke in illegally. The individuals in question are claiming to be your family members. They say there's been a misunderstanding. They are my family, but that doesn't give them the right to break into my house. I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We'll be holding them overnight then. You can come to the station tomorrow to file a formal complaint." As soon as I hung up with the police, my phone started ringing nonstop. First it was my parents calling, then Janet. I didn't answer any of their calls. Then the text messages started flooding in. Mom texted, "Rowena, we're at the police station. You need to tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Call us back right now." Dad wrote, "This is ridiculous. Tell the police you gave us permission to use the house." Janet sent about 10 messages, "I can't believe you called the police on your own family. My kids are with Rob's parents and I can't get to them. You're destroying our lives." I read every single message and laughed. They actually thought I was going to lie to the police and get them out of trouble. After what they'd done to me? Not a chance. I called my work director and explained I had a family emergency and needed to come home early. He was understanding and said my assistant could handle the rest of the trip. The next day I flew home and went straight to my house. It was a mess. There were wine glasses everywhere, food crumbs on my furniture, and empty bottles in my kitchen. They didn't have time to clean up because the police caught them. Then I went to the police station. My family was still there, and they'd obviously spent the night in jail. When they saw me walk in, they all started talking at once. "Rowena, thank God you're here," Mom said, "tell them this is all a mistake. You need to explain to these officers that we had permission," Dad said in this commanding voice. Janet was crying, "My babies are asking for me. I need to get home to my children." Rob just glared at me with bloodshot eyes. I looked at the investigating officer. "I want to make it clear that I never gave any of these people permission to be in my house. I never gave them keys. They somehow got into my house illegally and threw parties while I was traveling for work." My parents' faces went white. Janet started crying harder. Rob looked like he wanted to kill me. Dad tried one more time, "Rowena, stop this nonsense. Tell them the truth, that you gave us the keys and then got mad about something stupid." "I am telling the truth," I said, "they broke into my house." The officer nodded, "We'll need you to sign some paperwork, and we'll continue with the charges." In the end, I decided not to push for the maximum penalties because I felt bad for my nephews. I asked the officer if my family could be released on bail, and they were. But they still had to face consequences. A few days later, the police called me with the full story. It was even worse than I'd imagined. Your sister made impressions of your house keys when they visited for your housewarming party, the officer explained. She used some kind of soft plastic material to make molds, then had duplicate keys made. I couldn't believe it. She planned this from the beginning? It appears so. They also had inside information about your travel schedule. Apparently your sister has a friend who works in the HR department at your company and was giving them information about when you'd be out of town. My family didn't end up going to prison, but they were fined heavily. The offense was also reported to Rob's workplace, and he got fired from his job. Janet lost all her friends who had been at the party because they were furious about being arrested and finding out they'd been partying in a house illegally. My parents tried calling me for weeks, but I never answered. Janet sent me long emails about how I'd ruined her life and her marriage. I deleted them all without reading past the first few lines. I changed all my locks and installed an even better alarm system. Mrs. Henderson became an even closer friend. She felt terrible that she hadn't realized it was my own family breaking in. I should have recognized them from your housewarming party, she said. Don't blame yourself. I never imagined my own family would do something like this either. Now I don't talk to my parents or Janet at all. What they did was unforgivable. They made copies of my keys behind my back, used my house for parties while I was working, and acted like they had every right to do it. When I think about how they told me I didn't deserve a house, and then secretly treated my house like their own personal entertainment venue, it makes me sick. But I love my house more than ever. It's truly mine now, protected and safe. And I have Mrs. Henderson watching over it, a real friend who actually cares about me.